This is not the Church of Emmanuel, Christ of Latter-day Saints, of Joseph Smith. This is the Church of Jesus Christ.
Travis Wayne Goodsell. Another day in gangster Utah paradise. Matthew chapter 7 is well known by Christians. They love to quote the first line, and that's it. Judge not, lest ye be judged. But for Mormons, it's also in the Book of Mormon. So Mormons believe that it's proof that Jesus is real, despite the 1769 King James Version errors and all. Nonetheless, Mormons know this too. They all at least draw near to it with their lips, whether their hearts are far from it. You be the judge, and you can't just make a claim. Yep, I'm not a false accuser. That's what this is all about, is false accusations against other people, making judgments on them that are not true. And so it first starts off with the beam and the mote. A beam is what's used to build a building. The mote is a little sliver that comes from a beam. And so a person who makes a false accusation against someone else is projecting. They are taking a sliver from their own beam and accusing someone else of having that sin or crime, whatever the false accusation is. And so I've tried to warn my viewers, mostly my first-time viewers, because they're the ones that break this and get banned. They don't get it. You guys, oh my God. When you attack me for telling you that Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon were in the learning of the Jews, oops, you just pulled a beam and a mote. You've accused me of a mote. You're threatening me to deny Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon in the learning of the Jews. And you insult me. And you deny. And you call me a liar. And you bear testimony of the lie. You don't know and understand this doctrine. You are not being Christ-like, as you claim you are. You automatically are wrong and in the wrong. And you expose yourself. So that's why it concerns me when people get very mean in their lies and accusations of me. Because, oh dear God, you do that? I had the one woman just the other week who did that. Dear God, she literally had me trembling of how evil she is, because none of what she was saying about me was true, and that scared me that she was doing it. But it's a tried and true fact of human behavior. Psychology needs to learn from the Bible and the precepts in the Book of Mormon, and they don't. Right, John DeLynn? And so, when you put a thumbs down, when you put a hate comment, you're revealing you are the enemy. And so I had a person claim that I'm a racist. It was my 2023 video after the Miss Universe scandal last year in Utah, or Miss America scandal in Utah. I was accused of being racist in that video, and yet that person was the one who was racist. What happened last year, and why even YouTube was recommending last year's videos, there was only one local news that I could find that covered this. Miss Lehigh won the competition, but for some reason the pageant coordinators purposely fixed it so that she couldn't win, and she was dethroned and the crown given to the runner-up for Lehigh. And as a result, the winner of Utah was the Asian lady. I don't remember if it was Salt Lake or which town she was from, which city she was from. But then she would go on to win Miss America last year. And so all this came up because Sunday was this year's Miss America. And this was the first year that men didn't care to watch. No swimsuits. That's the only reason for it. You're putting women on a stage to be looked at, and you don't want your audience to look at them? Are you kidding me? Oh, we want you to listen to how smart they are. I never understood that in the older singles ward, younger singles ward in here in Utah. You get all these women who purposely cover up and hide and wear black because they don't want men to see them for their bodies. They want men to get to know them for their minds. And sorry, it doesn't work that way. You have to first get our attention. Then we go, I want to know more. Assuming it's the right kind of guy. But women aren't very good judges on guys, are you? Nonetheless, despite my loneliness, we have a situation where all religions are frauds. The Jews were first. They go way back to about 1500 BCE. And other villages, hamlets in Israel were also formed at different periods of time. And we can go all the way back to the beginning where the origin of humans came from Southeast Asia, Africa, and then migrated up into the Nile River and then out throughout the whole world. And so by 1500, there's a group that's formed a little hamlet called Salem. Yeah, it became Jerusalem. And it was made famous with the visit of Tautmose IV during Armageddon 1, the original from which John gets it from. Because the Pharaoh took a vacation break in the middle of the war to go to Salem. And after that, they then built a palace to Tautmose and eventually a temple. And had tributary kings over Salem. And that's where we get the origin of the Jews of Judah living in Jerusalem. They are Egyptian. And so when Babylon conquered, they were terrorists. This wasn't a situation where, hey, we're your neighbors, you want to trade with us. You get to keep your kingdom, but continue to trade. No, they conquered the land and took hostages. They were terrorists. And thus racist in their terrorism, because the people were a specific cultural, racial group. And so racist and bigoted because of their religion, which was Egyptian. And then they were set free by King Cyrus of Persia. They eventually made it back to Jerusalem, as it was now called, and rebuilt the temple, despite the skirmish with the Samaritans, who were transplants from Assyria mixed with the poor of northern Israel that didn't get deported to Assyria. And then the Greeks with Alexander the Great, tyrant, conqueror, rather than trading with his neighbors. When you conquer a land, you are the enemy. Plain and simple. No matter if you call yourself the Great One. You have to let people have their land. You can't take away rights of life, liberty, and property. Mormons should know this. That's Lucifer's plan of happiness. We have to take away your agency because you're not going to use your free agency correctly. So we need to tell you how to live your life and how to think and how to feel. And what to do. Be compelled in all things. And so yes, the Greeks were the next tyrants as they took over the Jerusalem temple and sacrificed pigs. Oh no, bacon. But still, it was a violation of their rituals. And so the Maccabean revolt occurred as Judas Maccabeus took back the temple, and Hanukkah emerged. And then Rome, again, taking over the land, as the Jews didn't actually get their land back from the Greeks. They just got ownership of the temple back. The Romans allowed the Jews to continue to possess the temple and do their rituals in it, but Rome had their guards around the walls of the temple. And this occupation by Rome upset the Jews. They wanted their land back. And so during this time period of strife, you get a whole bunch of authors, Jewish authors, who are writing about the prophecies of the Egyptians of a Jewish Christ, who's the Egyptian Christ, Horus, who would come in the latter days to save the people. And so you get a lot of bedtime stories written that became scripture, trying to give hope to the Jews that one day they will be free from their oppressors. And there were some Jews who couldn't wait and purposely tried to force the fulfillment of prophecy and jumped the gun and waged war against Rome, doing little battle skirmishes. And Rome just utterly crushed them, as the temple would then get destroyed 72 AD CE. But Rome was unable to completely crush the rebellion, because the destruction of the Jewish temple only motivated the Jews to continue the fight. And with the Therapeutae during the Roman period time, you've got pockets of sort of Jews, but not necessarily, because they're not living in Judah in all cases. You've got all the way from Egypt into Turkey with all these pocket groups. The Dead Sea Scroll Qumran community, for example, is one of those that were in Israel. And so these pocket groups continued after Rome destroyed the temple, and they became congregations led by a bishop. And they all had their different apocalyptic literature, and they were using that as their basis for their congregation. And so it differed from other apocalyptic literatures of the Jews. And so each congregation had their own and argued that they had the one true apocalyptic literature. And so, yeah, the knowledge of the original author was getting lost. And so, yeah, there were different names for the Christ, depending on the author who wrote the stories. And thus, the way you perceive the text is how you perceive the nature and character of the Christ. But Constantine, realizing that this ongoing war for 300 years is just not working to exterminate these groups. And so he maliciously deceived the people in claiming that he saw a sign in the heavens of the latter-day Cairo. Having deciphered Paleo-Hebrew, I deciphered thus all the other alphabetical languages back then. The Cairo is the X for Chi, and the Rho is the flag symbol of Egypt. And so with the Cairo combined, the flag symbol is right there at X marks the spot. This is the cross of Christ of the Jewish authors who wrote about a Jesus guy who gets murdered on a cross of the Romans. They didn't use crosses, they used poles. So obviously these are not literal history events. But you have Christians who want to change science and history to conform to their religious interpretation. And thus, what Constantine caused was a racist attack to conquer the Jews instead of the fighting, the genocidal murder. He is a terrorist. But instead of conquering land, because he already owned the land, now it was the genocidal murder. And he did this through racism. The first creed of Christianity is racist. It is abominable. Because in that creed, he turns the Jewish authored scriptures into literal history. No longer are they prophecies of the Jewish Christ to come in the future. And he tricked them with the Cairo. That's actually the location on earth where Zion, and thus the Christ, would be. And Jasmine knows. She asked about the Christmas tree. And thus, there it is. Same as in Genesis chapter 1. The date, the location, and the name of the Christ that the Jews were prophesying of, all rolled up into a combination of Paleo-Hebrew letters. And also, they designated what the name should be. And so, having turned Matthew into literal history, Matthew now gets to see that it's not Emmanuel anymore. It's now Jesus. That's now the name of the Christian Christ, of Constantine. The bishops who were forced to attend or not get funding, and there was the one group, the Arians as they were called, not the same type of Arians today, were excommunicado, anathema. And the leader of that congregation, he had Luke, but he revised it for his apocalyptic literature. And so we have his original document before he altered it in our New Testament as a result. But nonetheless, it still reveals Emmanuel in there, even though, like Matthew, the author chose to use Jesus, which is from prophecy also. But you need to understand the baby name meanings and how they differ. So he only has one name. Isaiah gave us that name. It's Emmanuel. It's the Egyptian deity, Amun, whose son Amun is Horus. And they couldn't decide on the nature and character of their Christ. There are too many ones to explain. And nobody wanted to give theirs up. And so Constantine had to settle it. He created a new word. It has no meaning other than not real. Because if you're making up a word to describe the nature and character, it means not real. But Christians use the word Trinity. It means not real. And so you have all these Christians that are upwards of over 2 billion who are all claiming that Jesus is real. And they try to put the fear in you. Can't do that. Jesus doesn't approve. You especially see this with evangelicals lately. They love to force the behavior of other people who are not evangelical. Like the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, too. They cannot allow other people to live the lives they want to live. This is racism. This is hate. And yet they claim love. See the beam and mote being played here? And, worst of all, most abominable of all, because they turn the scriptures into literal history, they now blame the Jews for murdering their Christian Christ. Which, if you actually read it, they don't. It was the Roman government which founded Christianity. when you leave out historical details, dear God, what abominations you create as you forget your history. Right, Mormons? And so, yes, this great and abominable Church of Constantine is racist. They are a hate group. They are a terrorist organization. But over time, they would fulfill the Daniel Nebuchadnezzar prophecy dream as Christianity under Constantine is the iron mingled with clay that shatters. And so even though the Pope claims that all Christianity is under him and his rule and reign, nope, everybody goes their own way. They all have different doctrinal interpretations of the Bible. Right, Joseph Smith? All Mormons know this. It's constantly repeated for us. Everybody was using the same scriptures, but nobody could agree on what it means. Sort of like Matthew chapter 7. You have a big old moat. Oh, yeah? And so when you argue conclusions, that's what's called Bible bashing. When you're debating somebody about religious interpretation of Scripture, you're supposed to go to the premises and argue premises. And if you can't argue a premise in somebody's formula for a conclusion, you have to accept and acknowledge that the conclusion is sound. It's deductively logical. And that's why exposing the premises is a big part of fixing people's inaccurate arguments. Just as I've done with you guys. Christians purposely leave out premises of history and thus screw up the doctrine, and thus the conclusions are wrong. So all that needs to be fixed. And yeah, the conclusion is still Christianity is false and racist and terrorist. But these shattered groups don't all agree with being violent and taking over other people's religious beliefs. They just want to have their own little world of their religious beliefs, even though it is still racist. Because when they say Jesus is Lord and blame the Jews for murdering Jesus, you're racist. And with the Jews, they're also a religious group, and thus you're a bigot. It's a double whammy for the Jews. You're a racist bigot when you attack the Jews with your false belief. And so, yeah, all Mormons should be fearing and trembling. Oh, crap, we're in the great and abominable church because we claim to be Christian. Yeah. Did you not catch on from the Book of Mormon? Learning of the Jews. Joseph Smith. Hey, we're the Jewish Christ. We're preparing for the Jewish Christ. Deuteronomy 18, 15 through 19. It's even in the New Testament. And so, Islam's not removed from this either. 600, Muhammad claims he's the Jewish Messiah. And he's changing the religion to Islam, technically. Islam is a religion, Muslim is a culture. And he claims that he went to the top of the mountain to receive the Quran from Allah. That is racist. He is not the fulfillment of the prophecies of the Jews. He is a fraud. But he calls himself the prophet. Islam all call him to this day the prophet. From Deuteronomy 18, 15 through 19. That's why. And Muhammad is a terrorist. He took away the rights of other people, life, liberty, property, with a scorched earth conquering. Join or die, as the villages were all burned to the ground. And then they practiced polygamy for the sole purpose of amassing a great number of Islam. And over time, as America gets founded, you have those who claim that Islam is abusive, and so they seek asylum in America. America grants it to them. But they don't give up Islam, which was the terrorist organization for which you were claiming you had to leave. In Iran, just the other year, there was the big female protest for the murder of a teenager from the morality police. And yet, they are in denial that it is their religion. They are refusing to give up their religion. The Quran tells them to cover up and hide. The Quran tells them that if they are disobedient to the Quran, they are to be stoned to death. But the women are not giving up the religion that they are now claiming is wrong, that they're protesting. They're wanting a new kind of Islam. And they're unable to understand when the New Testament talking about putting new wine in old wineskins, that it can't be done. You have to distance yourself completely. And as we have seen, those who have sought asylum in America and have moved to America and claim to get citizenship in America are not giving up their terrorist religion. And they amass in numbers, they rise up in education and in career fields. They are business owners, they are government leaders, they are in the press. In and of itself, it's fine, but now they have manifested their real intentions. They were claiming to be victimized, and we all should have recognized it when they wouldn't give up their religion. They are now threatening America and wherever else in the world they have gone to. They are reporting in the press that they are the victims of Israel. They are threatening our president to tell Israel to stop the defense, because that's what Israel's doing. October 7th was Hamas. And the Islamic press said, oh, we don't associate with Hamas. We didn't like them in our country anyway. Yeah, well, now we've seen the tunnels. Who built the tunnels again? The Gazan people. For Hamas. The people that Israel arrested when they went in to defend themselves were the Gazans who were fighting the Israelis. They're not civilians. They're terrorists, born and bred to be terrorists. So yes, little kids are terrorists. But you have them all scattered around the world, threatening that if people don't join them in destroying and exterminating genocidally Israel, to kick them out of the land, that those people are the racist bigots. They are war criminals with Israel. Islam has revealed itself as not having changed a bit. They have manipulated our Constitution to claim religious freedom from the First Amendment and cultural freedom in the 14th Amendment, Section 1. That's why they're protesting. They did not give up their religion that they claimed they came to America to avoid the abuse. Founded by their prophet, who was a racist bigot towards the Jews. So here we come, Mormons. Your turn. Book of Mormon, Learning of the Jews. Not witchcraft. You are a racist bigot for calling Joseph Smith a witch. Right, D. Michael Quinn? Oh, you're dead now. You got a whole bunch of ignorant people who believe you. Sandra Tanner claims she did her book separate from D. Michael Quinn's. Sorry, Sandra. You're a racist bigot towards Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon, as she claims to be Christian. The church finally ruined her, by the way, in case you didn't know. She lived there by the ballpark. Been paying attention to the news about the ballpark? Yep. The church ordered the government to do that to the ballpark, to get rid of Sandra Tanner. And it worked. She's gone. Her church destroyed. But I think you can still get her stuff online. I do highly recommend the Mormonism, Shadow or Reality. It's a great collection. I just wish she didn't annotate over the top of them. She should have done that with her own copy. I'm very capable of identifying what's going on without her telling me what to believe, which is all Christian. But nonetheless, it's a great reference book. And then the church finally came out and released the Joseph Smith Papers, which condemns this church, exposes them, reveals who the Danites were that sabotaged Joseph Smith. Yeah, the Danites. Brigham Young and Heber C. Kimball joined the church to overthrow it, destroy it, and murder Joseph. Obviously, Mormons don't want to believe this, because Brigham's church has to be true. And so Mormons deny, Mormons lie, Mormons gaslight, Mormons refuse to study, Mormons refuse to know the truth. And in so doing, you become racist bigots. You become the enemy. And when you threaten me to deny Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon and the learning of the Jews, you are a terrorist. You are enforcing your interpretation of belief with violence, with threats. You know the Book of Mormon. You know about Nehor. You know which documents from Brigham Young are forgeries because they go against the Book of Mormon. Section 132, it's a forged document, goes against the Book of Mormon. No polygamy. Section 116, wrong spelling of Adam-on-Diamond, forged document. And so, yeah, there isn't going to be an Adam-on-Diamond priesthood meeting where Lucifer gives Jesus the keys of government of the United States of America. That is Danite code for we are going to overthrow the United States. And they've been doing a good job. They're almost there. See, Trump got chosen for Iowa last night. What a surprise. And so now, Iowa, if the Supreme Court finally decides, yeah, Trump can't run for the election, well, he's the Iowa candidate. Iowa will then be faced with the decision whether to obey the Supreme Court or say, bleep you, Trump is our president for this coming election. Do you see what's happening? These people are already seditious conspirators. But our government didn't hold them accountable. And so there's more problems that are emerging. But if we went to the Constitution, none of this is allowed. They are not obeying the Constitution. Our government has fallen. And so, spiritually fallen, now they're slowly, physically collapsing it. I sent a letter to Biden yesterday because I had heard that the Supreme Court had ruled against an abortion ban, or sided with an abortion ban. And Biden came out with a little tweet thing or statement saying that he's upset with the Supreme Court for this. Article 2 orders the President of the United States to keep the Supreme Court in check and balance by enforcing the Constitution. The Supreme Court has violated the 14th Amendment, Section 1. Biden needs to step up and remove those Supreme Court justices who overthrew Roe v. Wade and all these other things with the election in 2020 and prosecute them. Lock them up for seditious conspiracy. They're going against the Constitution. And yet people are saying, no, there's nothing any other branch can do if the Supreme Court makes a bad ruling. God, we're all taught as kids. People who immigrate are taught it's a check and balance system. The president not only gets a veto for Congress if they pass an unjust law, he also can take down the Supreme Court for insurrection. It's right there. Faithfully execute the law. The law is the 14th Amendment, Section 1 and Section 3. He's not doing it. Biden is not doing his job. And MAGA knows this. They know it. And they know that he will not do it because they call him weak. Snowflake. And so America has fallen. Nobody wants to do their job for the people. So section 1 also is for babies. Once you're a baby, you now have rights. And that's why MAGA are purposely forcing women to have the baby. Trying to claim that the fetus has rights and arguing it so that the woman has to have the baby. And then they human traffic the babies through adoptions. And they're all evangelicals. And so these Danites, going back to them, likewise sabotaged Joseph's church by calling it the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints to the new converts. They purposely said the Book of Mormon is another testament of Jesus Christ. See, it's got the same stuff in the 1769 King James Version. It's proof it's Christian too. See, Jesus is in the Book of Mormon. This was a malicious, evil intent, as Joseph Smith tells us in the 1838 visionary accounts. Verse 1, Joseph Smith Papers tells us that evil disposed and designing militant person are the Danites, and Willard Richards is one of them, under Brigham Young. He put in Jesus Christ in the name of the church. No Mormon can argue this. It's the Joseph Smith Papers. It's the authoritative source. The church put it up. The church is promoting it. The church is daring you to read it. And you won't. Because the church won't change the scriptures. They won't change the doctrine. They won't change the practices that Joseph Smith had. Right, women? All Mormons should know they're racist, bigoted, sexist, hateful of the poor, anti-Semitic. It's because the church is white supremacist. So yeah, they love to have blacks join the church. See, we're no longer racist. I have a black friend who's Mormon. Oh my God. I was even told as a kid that still makes you a racist. You're not their friend. Right, Kwaku? Yeah, you got so much attention, everybody claimed to love you, and oops, critics interviewed you in a debate and brought up Brigham Young, and you were forced to confess that Brigham Young's a racist. And where are you now? You've gone missing. As James and Jasmine have informed me, and I informed you, that the missionaries are still born and raised and taught that blacks are fence sitters, even after 1978. Oops. Oops. Mormons are terrorists. They use their religion as a cover for their abominations. And when people leave the church because they got the wrong feeling, they still take the lies and abominations of the church that gave it to them as Mormons. And so, yes, even critics attack me and force me to deny Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon as the learning of the Jews. Egyptian. As just yesterday, wasn't it? A woman had reached out to the internet site that Paul had established for me, and Paul sent the email or the contact message, and she was trying to get me to do videos condemning Joseph Smith for polygamy. I won't do it. I know the truth. I did the study. I did the research. I used science, not spiritual witness feelings. Joseph Smith was framed and sabotaged by Brigham Young and his Danites. I have been aware of every single claim to justify polygamy of Joseph. None of it is legitimate. And yet, people refuse to believe. And they get angry at me. See, Mormons, they get angry at me because polygamy, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with child brides? Oh my God. Stay away from kids. Nelson goes and lowers the age to 11. I see what the church is doing because I did my research. I know they're a fraud. I know what they are plotting. I know that they are behind all of this. They paid Russia for the war against Ukraine. They paid Islam for the war against Israel. They are working with the Council for National Policy to overthrow our government. 2016 election. Yeah, the church. Roe versus Wade. The church. The Disrespect for Marriage Act. The church. The bribing of the Supreme Court justices. The church. The compromised Congress. The church. Senator Lee endorsing Trump. The church. This is how it works. This is a criminal organization. It's a terrorist group, just like Christianity and Islam. Trying to take away other people's agency, to force them to obey their laws and for strength of youth standards and values. Right, YouTube? YouTube, a few years back, forced all creators to flip the switch to say we are not for families, thus children under 18. And so thus, when we say, no, our videos are not for children, we are saying our videos are not family content. And yet, YouTube still has the 18 plus that they did on my Huntsman video last week. And that they do to other women. The standard guidelines of YouTube are unconstitutional, turning YouTube into a terrorist group, threatening creators to obey or be banned. They never even have a category for religion. They won't do it. They've got all these other categories. Not for religion. And And yet they're using religious standards for YouTube. And so technically, YouTube should have sex sites. And women showing off their bodies. Because that's adult content. All we have to do is designate our videos are not for children. Plain and simple. And they won't do it. They're telling creators that they cannot create. You have to create what YouTube demands you create. So, c'est la vie. So yeah, yesterday was Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Got to throw that in too. And Utah had a rally, and you got people saying, "Yeah, we're making change." No, you're not. No. You've been fooled into thinking you're making change. The Black Lives Matter protests in 2020 proved that your protesting marches are worthless. The white supremacists allow them, but they give you grief as the police for which you were protesting beat you down during those protests. That dream is never going to come to pass. They're making sure that America will fall this year. And so, yeah, not just blacks, but those of color, those in DACA, you're all going to be kicked out. Doesn't matter if you're a naturalized citizen. That's what they're intending to do, is purge and cleanse America. Those are white supremacist terms. I know them. They have revealed their mind to me, and I want nothing to do with them. Ever since I was a little kid, they are evil to the core. They cannot be reasoned with. They themselves have to pull themselves out. And there are those who have done that. But once you get in a frenzy and you're in a group who help fire the flame, you end up burning the cross. Which, in case you didn't know, is that they're going to purposely prevent the Jewish Christ from ever coming by destroying America and thus keeping Zion from being built. That's what the Confederate flag is all about. It's the burning cross, because the leader of the Confederates was the one who formed the KKK. The Illuminati. That's why the inverted pentagrams are on the Confederate flag. So everybody who inverts their symbol are referring to that Illuminati group of whom Brigham Young and Heber C. Kimball were a part of, to overthrow the government of America. Alrighty, well, enjoy your day.